Come on. Get focused. There you go. What up, everybody? I am at the spot. All right, this is Carlton Hamilton. This is Plan Your Greatness. We're still on chapter 9, part 2, where I'm going to be talking about the second letter that I wrote in the chapter. Now, this one touches home a little bit more because this is the letter that I actually wrote to my son. He's 17 right now, but I made a lot of mistakes. And I use this letter as I am building our relationship now, rebuilding our relationship. Because he was my dog when he was little, and just some things happened between his mom and I, which fractured that relationship. So now I'm in the process of rebuilding that relationship. And so I took a moment to write the letter to him. And I was writing the letter again as I was apologizing, but at the same time, he's about to be 18 this month. And I'm basically telling him is that, all that pouting and blaming your mom, blaming me, that's got to end right now. I'm here to support you. But if you want to carry that around with you, it's not going to do you any good. Because I'm reminding him, as I did with my nephew, is that I carried that same baggage around with me. So there was some, the letters were very similar, but there were some very specific points that pointed toward my nephew, and in this letter that are pointing specifically toward my son. First of all, I said, I apologize. I write it in bold, capital letters. I said, I apologize for not being the man, the father at the most crucial time in your life. And I said, I had made a promise to you when you were little. And I remember this. There was a moment when they were little and we had gone to court, and I finally got the time where I could spend with them. And they came over for a weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So they had to spend the day with me Saturday and spend the night. And I'll never forget that day. It was incredible. But what I remember at night is after I gave them a bath and I put them to bed, I remember sitting there staring at them, both of these little suckers, and they were like 2 and 3, or 3 and 4. I think they were like 3 and 4. And I just remember crying and looking at them and said, I'm not going to let you fail. I'm not going to let you fail. I'm not going to fail you. But now as we move along on this, where I'm at right now, I had to apologize to him. I said, Jamar, I said I wasn't going to let you fail, which I'm not. But from that point up until now, I have failed you. That was very tough. It's even tough for me to say that right now. But I apologized to him and said, in the letter, I said, Jamar, I failed you up until this point. I said, and I'm sorry. I said, but fathers. Fathers need to raise their boys. There's moms out there that do great jobs, but fathers, all you fathers out there right now, you better raise your boys. You make all the difference. So these are the things that I'm learning now as a father late in the game. Because my son had shared with me, he felt there was just some things that there's damage that cannot be repaired. And I said, yep, and I take full responsibility for that. I said, but I do understand your journey. I do understand your pain because I went through that same pain with my father. But then I'm challenging him at the same time, and I said, well, who's directing your life now? As I said with my nephew, we may have programmed you, but who's making the decision now? Who's pulling the strings now? We talk more in maybe a mentor role, not a father-son role. And he's making a lot of decisions. And I'm like, well, who's making those decisions? You can keep going back and going, well, you didn't do this. I said, but who's making your decisions now? I can support you now. I can give you advice now. But I'm no longer the puppet master like I was when you were little or your mom. So, we brought you here, but you're in control now. Okay? I'm here, and I'll tell them this. I said, I'm here to support you now, and I'm here to support you the rest of the way, but you are in control now. Okay? So you got to stop complaining about what happened in the past, because that is not action. That's stating something, a discomfort, an irritation, but that's not action. And what I shared with him, I share with him a story, actually two stories. The first one is in prison, and how I noticed that so many of the inmates could articulate how they got there. I mean, I would just ask these casual, great interviewer. I mean, I'm a phenomenal interviewer. And I was asking these very open-ended questions, and I was getting this information. Didn't know, I just was curious as to why, what happened? How'd y'all get in here? Because I was like, how did I get in here? As I was asking myself the question, I started asking them the question. And it was phenomenal to hear how many of them knew that story. And they could articulate it to detail that I could actually write a book on all their stories. I wish I had taken them down one by one by one by one. I would have this great book of stories, and then I would be able to put it together the way that I'm putting it together in my mind now. And that is, they could articulate, they could articulate their stories. I thought that was fascinating. So here's what I learned from that. Because then I made a connection to a moment in time when I was a kid growing up in my neighborhood. Shout out to Chicago Heights, Illinois. Shout out to Beacon Hill. Shout out to Concord, Yale, Cambridge, Boston. Those are the main streets that I hung on. Up and down Concord, there was a family that had a Down syndrome child. His name was Gennard. Gennard would be found pushing a shopping cart up and down the streets, and if he wasn't pushing the shopping cart, he was just wandering up and down the streets. Gennard knew where he lived, so he could wander off and then come back. He could not speak coherently. I mean, like full sentences and everything. He had the typical Down syndrome stuff. He had the big tongue, and the eye, the sad, eyes. He had it all. And this is how I made that connection with the inmates. Okay? I'm listening to these stories of these inmates, and they're telling me in extreme detail why they're in prison. Then I go back to Gennard. People would throw rocks at Gennard. People would go up and punch him and kick him and take his card or take whatever he was doing. And Gennard would just be, that was it. He was just didn't know what was going on. And here's the comparison to the two. Those inmates could tell you how they got there. So then the natural reaction would be, if you can tell me how you got here, couldn't you reverse engineer that process and take yourself back? Or reverse engineer that process forward so you don't make the same mistakes and come back into the system at the high rate of recidivism that we see. Does that make sense? Common sense, okay? But we understand it's not so common. But here's what's interesting with Gennard. If you ask him what your name is, Gennard, he could tell you his name. If you were to ask him what the date was, couldn't give you a date. If you asked him what the time was, couldn't tell you the time. If you ask those inmates how they got there, so they can tell you a journey. But if you ask those inmates where they're going, they couldn't tell you. You see the similarity? I go back and ask Gennard. He couldn't really tell me how he got there, and neither could he tell me where he was going. But these inmates could tell me how they got here, but lo and behold, they couldn't tell me how they were going to get out of there. So they can articulate as an intelligent individual how they got here. But then all of a sudden they turn into Gennard as far as how they're going forward with their lives. So that's what I was sharing with my son. I said, look, you no longer have an excuse, just like the inmates. You don't have an excuse. You know how you got here. You can articulate it. How do I know you can articulate it? Because you're bitching and moaning about who was responsible and how you got here. That takes a level of cognition for you to say, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Therefore, this is how I am here. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so now you know you're here. Can you do that same process and give yourself a step-by-step process to get your ass up out of here? Inmates couldn't do it. Gennard couldn't do it because Gennard didn't have the mental capacity to do it. But you do. And again, I told my son, I said, hey, I apologize for everything that I have did to bring you to this point. But I also reminded him, I said, Jamari, here's the reality of when we look at a past situation and how it's impacting our lives. If I go back and make the change on meeting your mom, you know what happens? You're no longer my son. And now it's a crapshoot. You could very well be with rich parents, but you're not. You very well could be in a war zone, but you're not. You could very well be, you could be the product of a crackhead mom or a crackhead father, but you're not. You have reasonable health. You have cognition to actually put pieces together and organize them in a way that, you figured out how you got here. So what are you going to do with this? Okay? Did that anger, as I said before, did that resentment, did the blame, how has it empowered you? Has it helped you academically? Has it helped you, physically? Has it helped with your mind? What has it done? And if it hasn't done anything positive, then it's probably time to get rid of it and start something new. But again, that's a whole nother video as far as how we talk about how we hold on to things and how we recreate things and how we just keep running this cycle and then we think something else is going to happen. It doesn't happen. All right. So we're here. Okay. That's what I share with him in the letter. We're here. I'm here. So what are you going to do now? Because now I'm sharing with you is that, yep, I'm going to say it as many times as I can. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was not equipped to be a parent, but I've learned from those mistakes to where I'm at right now. You're not dead. You have the cognition to think. So does your dad. So let's work with this together. Okay. Let's try to figure this thing out together. I mean, if you don't want to, if you want to keep jumping back in the past and trying to relive that and trying to get other people to change themselves, and then you think that that's going to change you, you can still work with that. I'm done with that, So the understanding is you have the choice to create any type of thoughts you want in your head. And this is what I'm constantly sharing with my son. And this is what I'll constantly share with people is that you have the ability to hold any thought in your head. Now, you can hold very negative thoughts about how you are where you are. And in most cases, those thoughts will crush you. Or you can start looking at what you can do right now. That'll create some energy. And what are the possibilities of, if you do these things now, what they will look like in positivity in your future. That can inspire you. That will empower you. Okay? Do you want thoughts that'll crush you, or do you want the thoughts that's going to empower you? All right? So, last but not least, I just shared with him, I said, hey, look, you may not believe that I've gone through the things that you've gone through, but I did. All you got to do is go back and look at some of the other videos as I break down, the bouts of depression, prison, homelessness, self-loathing, and addiction to pornography. Oh man, I had a whole bunch of stuff. I was juggling all kinds of things. And now that I've cleaned those things up, I see that not one of those was productive. So, I went through the same similar moods, which created a temperament, which actually solidified a personality And then it created what I'm learning these new words, a personal reality. Okay. Now, when you do that, you tend to just keep doing this thing over and over and over again. So again, within that whole process, you have a choice. And that's what I've learned. I had a choice and I chose to stop it because I realized that none of that stuff was really helpful. So it is your choice. And I share this with my son in the letter. And I'm trying to do that every day. Very, like in this video, I'm very direct. But when I deal with these questions with my son, I have to be very strategic, because you just can't fire something at somebody and expect them to absorb it. How I got to where I got was a very methodical process. How you get somebody out of it is the same approach. It's got to be a very strategic, methodical process. All right. So I close out by just saying, I'm here to support you. Let's do this thing together. So my challenge again is very similar. I think I'm going to have the same challenge for all 3 videos is, with all these things that have gone on in your life, how do you want the world to remember you? And are your thoughts moving you in that direction, the way that you want the world to view you? Do you want them to see you as somebody that's just bitching and moaning and complaining and just trying to blame and hold everybody accountable for your sad existence? Or do you want to say, you know what? I want people to know I'm a fighter, and I fought all the way, and I created this new world, and I treated my son or daughter or everyone else the way that I wish my parents would have done with me. This is Plan Your Greatness. And I'm going to say this again. Plan your greatness. You know why? Because no one else will. See you all next time.